No, no.
Okay, so if everybody else could turn off their green lights, and I'll just keep mine on. As you can imagine, when there's a room full of people, I'm always excited to do this, right? So just empathy is a great word. The Common Council meeting will be held Tuesday, December 17, 2019 at 7 p.m. is called to order. Would you please call the roll?
Alderperson Labatsky. Present. Alderperson Bailey.
Present.
Alderperson Akers.
Present.
Alderperson Sarian.
Present.
Alderperson Kastner.
Present.
Open,
Present.
opening prayer, we have Pastor Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and to all of you honorable city leaders and to all of you citizens. I count it quite an honor to stand here and pray before you. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you, Lord, for this great season that we find ourselves in and this great time of celebration and Thanksgiving and certainly the celebration of Christmas. We thank you for all of that and the great spirit of charity that we feel and the spirit of family and joy that you have given to us. And all of that, I say thank you for that. I pray, Lord, that you would lead and guide all of our conversation here tonight. Thank you for our city leaders, and you would bless them and keep our police officers safe and our fire department safe and just be here and lead us according to your great wisdom, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you.
Amen. If we could stand and remove your hats, unless you're a veteran, I think you can. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I like it when we have a big room of people doing
Yeah.
that. Sounds good.
Yes. Item D is approval of the December 3rd, 2019 Common Council minutes. I entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Motion by Alderperson Akers, there second?
Second.
Second by Alderperson Kastner, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Under Mayor's report this evening, I just have one thing. I want to note that tomorrow evening, Wednesday, December 18th, at 6 o'clock, our new ice skating rink is up and running. Our Public Works folks created the rink along with our Park and Recreation staff. There will be free skates that we had donated from the Pettit Center. I want to thank them. They're old skates, so they look a little beat up, but they're purposely are they're all functional. I want to thank the folks that sharpened all the skates for us. They were fantastic. I want to thank True Stone Financial, which came through with a large donation for us. I want to thank Dan Jansen Fest, which came through with another large donation for us. I want to thank Meyer today, which came through with not as big of a donation, but a very significant donation today. I want to thank Don Carlson back there, who came as a private citizen, came through with a pretty sizable donation for us. And I want to thank all of the other folks. The Milwaukee Admirals have been involved. The Pettit Ice Center's been involved. Shaw Hockey's been involved.
Contractors?
Lincoln Contractors came through with a great donation for us. I want to thank Milwaukee County that donated all its old rubber that when they did ice skating rinks, so we reused that. They also came through with some other stuff that they used for the ice skating rink. I want to thank the person that donated over 100 or 150 milk crates to store the skates in the shelter that we're providing. I want to thank a large convenience store operation that's not located in Greenfield that doesn't want their name to be used for a significant donation of in-kind hot chocolate, coffee, and all sorts of other things.
Little League?
I want to thank the Greenfield Little League because they were also supportive of this. It's the New Berlin Greenfield Little League now, by the way. They combined.
Hockey Locker?
Hockey Locker were the folks that sharpened our ice skates. So it was, and there were a lot of ice skates. There were over 100 pair, I think, 150 pair.
Did you say
So
partners?
when will the rink be open?
So the rink, if you go to our website, which is under construction, as it always is, but there should be information on the rink. The hours will be posted. But tomorrow night, there is a rink lighting and opening ceremony, and you can actually start skating from at about 6:15, 6:20, 6:30. It's located at about 51st and Layton at Conkle Park. Everybody's been wondering what's been going on over there. They had to level it, because if you don't have a level ice skating rink, it's 12 inches on one side, one on the other. But I want to personally thank, too, Kent, from our Park and Rec Department. He came to us this year from the city of Milwaukee Public Schools. He had some experience with ice rinks there, and he said, you know, I know, Mayor, you want an ice rink. I think I can help you with that. I want to thank John and Joe and, God,
Partners of Greenfield Park.
well, their partners, I mean, but so when we try to do things in our city, we try to utilize the resources that we have. We do sometimes we do a little bit of dumpster diving to get skates and to get resources. But the folks that we have put it all together. And I think when you go to see the heated chalet with restrooms and a concession stand and rubber flooring, and the benches and the ice skating rink with LED lights in it and all that other stuff, you're going to be incredibly impressed by how those folks put it together. I want to thank Scott, the director of Park and Rec. These are our people that are doing it. We're not hiring contractors and going and it's all through donations and stuff. So I encourage you to go ice skating. You know, I used to ice skate at Scout Lake. I think a lot of us did when we were little. Pam did. Pam and I grew up in the same neighborhood and used to throw snowballs at each other. So,
He threw them, I didn't.
no, you did too.
No,
And
never.
your brother did.
Never.
He was very defensive. All right. Now it's illegal. Back then it wasn't illegal.
No, it's not illegal.
All right. Are there any other items? Tax bills are going out too. They went out last week. I don't know if you've received them. Just remember there are different lines. Look at the line. Ours should be about 2.5%, 2.4%. The taxes that we raised this year, just under Mayor's report, essentially paid for 2% raises, most of which are governed by a collective bargaining agreement, and for health insurance. That was it. So that's why we need to do what we do to create ice skating rinks and amphitheaters and beer gardens and Little League parks and stuff like that. Okay? Any aldermanic reports this evening?
I do. Thanks, Mayor Knightsky. I just wanted to give you a quick update on the tree commission. We applied for a $50,000 grant. It's looking very positive for 2020 to plant some more trees because we lost a lot of trees through the emerald ash borer. And we do have a opening on the tree commission, so anybody that would like to be on the tree commission, talk to me after the meeting.
Okay, very good. The tree commission next, just under Mayor's report, and I know everybody wants to get to the public hearing, I'm sorry, but going on to the tree commission will probably be changing its nature next year. We're trying to become a bird, bee, and butterfly city, a monarch city. Again, we're using donations from people to do those things, and we're trying to integrate the environment into our community to the extent that we can. So we pay attention to that stuff, and I want to thank staff and Alderperson Bailey and Dennis Firmenich and Renee upstairs in engineering. We're working towards those things. Any other aldermanic reports? Any announcements? Alderperson Lubatsky?
Thank you. Greenfield High School had their annual holiday sharing where they collect food, clothes, and toys. They were donated to those who are less fortunate in our community. It was a huge success for donations and people that were served. Thank you for the students who participated in helping with this. Also, Maddock is having their 12 Days of Strays. Maddock wants to see all furry friends go home for the holidays, December 12th through the 23rd. The adoption fee is the price of the day. So if you go on the 13th, you pay $13 for a kitten, cat, or dog. If you go on the 14th, you pay $14. The mayor is also the chair of Maddock, correct?
I am. The dog catchers.
Yeah. So there's a lot of furry friends that would love to go home for the holidays, and they're adorable. The mayor and I were there this week.
I was
So-
signing checks. She came to get shots
Medicine.
for her dog or something.
Yeah.
So, okay. Just with regard to Maddox, last month they adopted 3,000 kittens and dogs. Was a record month for them. So. All right. Citizen commentary. So I see, and I'm going to mention 5 names. If you signed up on the sheets under citizen commentary, if you signed up for the public hearing, I'm not going to bring you up, okay? Kathleen Clark, Jeffrey Ubel, Nicole Tomczyk, Patrick Lassus, and Susan Tubick. Did you all sign up on using the sheets up front here? Yes, I did. Okay, so you're not here for any other reason other than the public hearing, right? Okay, so I will defer to that. Okay, Item I is public hearings, and I would indulge the council to combine both public hearings. This is the public hearing to adopt an ordinance to adopt the land use amendment to the 2008 City of Greenfield Comprehensive Plan for the properties located 11940 West Edgerton Avenue, 12,000 ... because we don't know what the addresses are, West Fogle, from single family to mixed residential. Tax key numbers is listed in the agenda. That would include adopting an ordinance to adopt the land use plan amendment and approving the site landscaping and architectural plans associated with that comprehensive land use plan. Item 2 is a public hearing on an ordinance to amend the official zoning map by rezoning those same properties from R1 Single Family Residential District to PUD Planned Unit Development Residential, and approving an ordinance to amend the official Greenfield zoning map by rezoning the properties at those addresses. Tax key numbers is listed. Now, before this meeting started, I tried to explain why there are 2 public hearings, and in a moment, Christy will go through what the specifics are. So the state, with every piece of property that's in the city, there are 2 things that can control its destiny. The first is zoning, which most people are familiar with and has been with us since common law began in England. But the second thing relates to the comprehensive land use plan, which was created in 2008. That's kind of the direction that the city should take. In order for a development to go through that's not zoned or comprehensive land use plan in a way that a developer likes, or wants to do what they're going to do, they have to change one or the other. Sometimes these hearings are just comprehensive land use plan, sometimes they're zoning, sometimes they're combined, okay? That's why there are 2 different items here, because state law requires that both be in sync, okay? With that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Christy Johnson and start going through the comprehensive land use plan. While she's doing that, you all gave me these sheets, and some of you filled out 2, and some of you may filled out 1. Now I'm going to coalesce them and have you and put them in piles, okay? Christy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This public hearing will be twofold. I will begin with a presentation about the comprehensive plan and the map amendments, and then the architect on behalf of the developer and owner of the land will also provide a presentation on the actual proposal for the buildings that would be constructed here if the rezoning and comprehensive land use map were amended. So just to orientate yourself, this is the very southwest corner of the city of Greenfield. The blue line that you see here is the municipal border. To the west, we have the city of New Berlin, and to the south, we have the village of Hales Corners. The property boundaries are a little different here, where the municipal line actually cuts through some properties. It doesn't follow a street as most property or municipal lines do. But in this case, access to the property, this is about 14 acres of land. The properties in question are highlighted in purple. Access through the property would be off of Edgerton Avenue. Just an overview, the developer is proposing a 192 senior housing complex, plus in the future, possibly 8 townhouse units to the north and 12 townhouse units to the west. So total approximately 14 acres of land. All of this land is currently zoned R1 single family, and they're proposing to change it to a planned unit development district for residential uses. A planned unit development is a zoning layer that basically just allows more flexibility, possibly in the form of density or setbacks that wouldn't normally be able to be obtained in like a commercial or mixed residential zoning district. Also, in order for that zoning to take place, a comprehensive land use map would need to be approved first. It's identified right now as single-family use. In 2008, the city of Greenfield adopted a comprehensive land use plan. It's a big, thick binder, and in that is a one-page map. Every single parcel in the city is identified. The city collectively, through a public hearing process, identified each parcel as, we see this type of use in the future, we see that type of use. Maybe today it's multifamily, but in the future we see it commercial. So every parcel is identified. These particular parcels in 2008 were identified to be single-family uses. This is it's a guide the comprehensive land use map is a guide, and actually the city is in the process of updating that map right now. About 10 years, you're supposed to update it. So the application is to request to change from single-family use to mixed residential, so in other words, multifamily. And again, in order for the zoning to change, first the land use map has to change. So just to give you an overview of what the proposal includes, again, north is up on the map. You have Edgerton Avenue here. So there's one larger building, 192 units, and then the 8 townhomes to the north and the 12 to the west. This is the zoning map as it is today. We have got multiple colors here. The blue here is identified as institutional. This is the schools, Whitnall High School and the school district properties here. And then you have single family with the lighter yellow and more single family with a darker yellow. There are different levels of single family zoning. Some, they just have a difference in like the size of the lot setbacks. That's the variation between the two yellows, but both single family. And again, we're only focusing on the city of Greenfield. We don't have that information for Hales Corners to the south. So the proposal is to change the areas highlighted here in blue, the 14 acres of land, to planned unit development. You have institutional use to the east and single family to the west. This potential zoning differentiation could act as a buffer. You have a more intense use to the east, institutional, you have a lot of traffic, a lot of people with the school district, and then you have single family to the west. This is the 2008 comprehensive land use map. Again, blue, institutional type of uses to the east, and then the yellow, there aren't two different shades here because in this case, yellow just means single family use. So again, if this is changed to mixed residential, as is proposed this evening, it could act as a buffer between the more intense institutional uses to the east and single family to the west. So, green is park and open space. Yeah, there's a little bit of green here to the west. So one thing I wanted to point out, this is an aerial view of the area that we're talking about. We have Carpenter Avenue and we have Holmes Avenue, both east-west directional streets. The city's official map, we're not talking about zoning, but there's another map called an official map, identifies a lot of future roads throughout the city. It's not necessarily right-of-way, it's not dedicated as right-of-way, but it was identified many years ago as this is what we see as possibly future roads, where roads could be laid out. And the city, many, many years ago, identified these as future roads. So you have 121st Street, and you have a continuation of Carpenter Avenue and a continuation of Holmes Avenue. That was laid out with the concept of a single-family development. That would include more homes along Holmes and along Carpenter and along 121st Street. The development, as it is proposed, would not have any access to Holmes or Carpenter Avenue. There would be one access off of Edgerton Avenue, and then you have loops within the property, and then this is a dead end that does not continue west. The zoning code lists standards for all zoning districts. And in order to create a planned unit development zoning layer, you need a minimum of 5 acres. So this is a chart. The left column is where the code stands, and the right column is what the developer is proposing for this particular proposal. So I don't need to go through each item, but I will point out 2 variations from the code. And again, with the planned unit development, this is the variance, if you want to put it that way, is something that the Common Council can approve with the planned unit development. And so the two variances that I'll point out is in one small area, the building setback is about 5 feet from a property line, and the setback requirement is 25 feet. And then the minimum dwelling unit size for one bedrooms, the code states should be 800 square feet, and their one bedroom units as proposed are 700 square feet. But the rest of the proposal meets the code as far as the PUD standards. Point out some development amenities. They will have concierge assistance services from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Again, this is a proposed senior independent living development. They will have food services and a kitchen with a chef, concierge, housekeepers, first and second shift, maintenance, and then also a business and a rental office. They'll have a fitness center, a hair salon, spa, a little theater. Again, amenities that maybe would be attractive to seniors who want to still live independently but not necessarily have to travel for those uses, and also shuttle service. As far as parking goes, the development does meet the parking requirements of the code. And this is factoring in the townhouses, which may be a future development. There are a total of 224 parking spaces, and that includes underground parking. So 116 underground parking spaces. And then total proposed on-site would be provided would be 240. The Plan Commission did review this proposal on October 8th and recommended approval. To date, we have received one letter of objection. And with that, I will turn it over to the architect, to Rinka, who will give a presentation on the architectural and more site details, and then I believe there's a video too. Which do you want to do first, Steve?
The presentation, please.
Should be on.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. My name is Steve Morales. I'm a partner at Rinka. We are the architect representing the current developer, which is Greg. I'd like to kind of first off, say thank you for having us here. We've been in front of you now a couple times, or not the council, but the city itself. And this is a familiar presentation to some of you. We did add a few extra slides in response to some of the comments that were made at the Plan Commission hearing in terms of concerns, and I'll point those out specifically as we go through the presentation. So the project itself is a senior living community. It's about independence for those aging members of the community, looking to have some place that still has a very social environment, has amenities on site that they could essentially enjoy and have as part of their living environment. Some of the project goals that we set out to accomplish early on in the beginning was to preserve the major woodland areas. Part of that was working with the city forester, creating a report that understood what was essentially worth keeping on site and what was not. And that was later then validated again more recently with our civil engineer and the forester as well, to confirm that that had still been the case a year later. The other thing we're trying to do is screen the building with the natural landscape. We'll have a couple exhibits here that will demonstrate that and show kind of the efforts that we're making to do that, as well as provide an active, walkable, and safe interconnected community for a lot of these residents, which again are still very active and independent, and we want to create an environment where they could have that kind of mobility and connectivity on site itself. And all of that really kind of comes down to these four kind of factors that these residents would be looking for. First one being independence, making sure that there's access to a lot of those various amenities that I've described. A wellness factor, there's a good physical fitness component to this, with fitness on site as well as interconnected trails around the building, again to promote that great physical activity. Community, great social spaces, as you'll see within the building, and how we talk about some of those things, a place for gathering, and amenities like Christy had mentioned about things having like a salon and spa and a small theater and a chapel as well to interact, and use those amenities. So just kind of overview, and Christy covered a lot of this, but I'll just kind of point out a couple things on the site. The site on the screen is essentially the white outlined site there to the essentially the left of the school. Looking at the variety of different structures around us, the school itself comes in at about 34 feet. Some of the other neighboring buildings are in the ranges of 32 feet up to 48 feet 40 feet, 45 in the neighboring direct area, mostly in the area that Chris had pointed out. And then our building itself is, because of the way the site slopes, is anywhere from 44 to 48 feet, and I'll cover that a little bit more moving forward here. The site here rotated to fit better on the screen. North is to the right-hand side of the screen. As you can see, it's really 3 parcels combined to create the summary that Chris had come up. There's an existing water main easement on site that is scheduled to remain. It might be modified a little bit to make the land work with it, but there is no intent for that to be abandoned. Part of what we looked at early on as part of those goals is what's shown essentially on the screen in green, essentially those woodland areas. That's what we went through and literally looked at almost every tree on this site with the forester to make sure we understood what was worth keeping, what wasn't, what was what was going to help with the screening of the site, and some of those other goals that we had early on. Part of doing that, as trying to be good patrons of the design process, is to essentially understand where this site kind of makes sense to lay out and put a building. What you see on the screen here is essentially a distance map from the neighboring structures that are closest to the site, and you can see there's concentric circles coming off of that, and you can see that they go up to 300 feet in distance, essentially a football field. So what that does is that allows us to inform kind of the design process, and we put together kind of the ideal site location to try to remove it or get it as far away from those existing structures as possible. What we wanted to do then beyond that is also then use that natural tree cover, make sure that the trees that are surrounding the site are not not being disturbed. A lot of it is being maintained and is really kind of using the natural landscape to screen it. The natural environment and those tree covers and that great landscape outside is all great amenities to these residents. They want to be out there, they want to be walking those trails, they want to enjoy that nature, natural landscape, and when they look out their windows, quite frankly, they want to look at some of those things as well. So when we talk about access, the lines in orange are essentially the access points. Christy mentioned this in one of her slides, that there's really kind of the main access off Edgerton. There's a loop internally that gets you back out there, and then there's a couple dead-end conditions that get you to those potential future parcels that are not part of this approval. The dashed line you see there, the connection to homes, is not an actual roadway. What it is an emergency access point for emergency vehicles only. It's essentially a second way for fire department emergency service vehicles to get through. It would be essentially barricaded off, and we'd work with the emergency service departments to make sure that they had access to it as they needed to, but vehicles are not encouraged to do it. And there's actually some other strategies that we're employing through the landscape architecture and through the way the site plan is laid out that actually discourages vehicles going through it. It actually makes it look like basically 2 walking trails. We've done this in other locations, in other developments. It's worked very well. We've worked hand in hand with the emergency response departments to provide some of those things that discourage vehicle traffic that would not be welcome, but it certainly creates a very safe environment for those emergency response vehicles to get into the site. So this is the layout of the site. It follows what Chrissy had outlined before. A little bit of a highlight into what's all included. There's a main building in the center. Underground parking exists underneath the building. There's a small drop-off area with some visitor parking out front, and what's really also out in front is kind of this deeper front porch area. All of this, as you can see, is surrounded by the greenery that's around us, and there's the 2 areas for the potential future townhomes, which you see towards the right of the main building and towards the top of the main building, those again not being there. You can see also that we've got some ponds that are there for natural stormwater collection is the intent, and it is required by code for all stormwater that hits the site to be collected and maintained on site and it not leave the site. We have to do that by code, and we have to go through a rigorous process through engineering to make sure that that's approvable before this can be constructed. So a couple of things to point out in some of the images around here. Some of this is existing images that's there, and some of this is kind of the intent of what the developer would like to do. So I'll start with the left-hand side. You can see we've got a couple different areas around the site where we want to create this kind of social atmosphere for residents who are going on for a walk around the site to essentially have stopping points for them to rest and interact and have those social connectivities. The image to the right, to the top of that, again, some more of that natural landscape that we're trying to build into the site, again, for multiple purposes, screening, and again, for enjoyment of the residents. Going around to the top image, we've got some areas in the back that are in the more densely wooded areas. Again, those could be those natural trails. Moving over to the right, what you see is this kind of 2 red signs. That's actually the current view looking into that area, which would be that emergency service vehicle kind of entry point that would be gated off and essentially be controlled by by the life safety departments. That's an actual view from the site back in the spring. You can see it's heavily wooded. Moving over to the right, some more kind of manicure trails. The idea there is that the developer, in this case, would work with the residents and various other interested parties, potentially the school for an educational program or something to essentially encourage some of those trail systems to exist in those wooded areas and possibly create some educational components, which you see in the bottom right corner of the screen. The strategy we took to kind of really dive into that screening, you can see there's several different heights here located on the map. The tree canopy furthest to the left of the screen, which is towards Edgerton, has a canopy of around 30 feet or so. Trees vary in height there, but the majority of the trees in that area are essentially around 30 feet in height. The building itself is situated, it's carved actually into the land a little bit. It has various grades. At the highest point's at 48 feet. The drive aisle itself is actually only 12 feet up, so again, mostly screened by that tree canopy. Going to the right of the image, you'll see the tree canopy actually to the north or the right-hand side of the image is actually much higher than the building. It's at 50 feet. Tree canopy is 45 feet, and I've got an image here that will show, kind of demonstrate that a little bit more. The houses essentially to the west of the main building or to the top of the page are in that 20-foot range. Some a little taller as you get further back in the road, but they're also situated an additional 4 feet above grade, so they're actually a little bit taller than what they seem. The top graphic at the top is a cross-section essentially going from the left side to the south of the site to the right side, which is the north of the site. You can see that some of the houses further to the right on that, you can see they're at basically plus 42 feet height. They're actually only 6 feet shorter than the actual main building. A lot of that has to do with the way the site is graded and how some of these houses sit on the natural landscape. What you see, though, and I'll point out, is those green trees, where there's a heavy effort here on the landscape architect's part to essentially screen this building in any way, shape, or form wherever there isn't already natural screening. So there's plans in the landscaping plans to essentially do that, essentially embellish and enhance that natural landscape that's already naturally screening the property. A couple things here. This is a new slide that those of you who are at the Plan Commission may not have seen. We're asked by actually a couple members in the audience at that point to look at where this development essentially was situated. If you would pull back a little bit further, what you see there up on Carpenter and set back, those views on the image on the top left, essentially setting back. The outline, that white line you see, is actually the building situated. And there's a couple other slides here that'll show that. The second slide down, again, is further back. And that white line is essentially the limits of the building height. As you can see, a lot of the vegetation, natural trees, are actually much taller the further back, right? That's natural perspective. The further back you go, the smaller the things are. And the things in the foreground, like those trees, are actually taller than the building from these perspectives.
So the building's behind the tree line or in front of it?
Behind the tree line. That's why you don't see the building. It's the white outline is essentially the outline of the exterior of the building. So moving down to the third image, on the left, the bottom left there, that's actually from off Edgerton. You can see somebody perspective in the distance, the small speckle in the front. That's actually one of the guys in my office. He's about 6'9". He's a pretty tall guy, and you can see the height of those trees around him. They're pretty big. The building in the white outline essentially further in the distance, right? This is now going back a football field in length off of some of these distances. You can see it's fairly small compared to that tree cover. Top right corner again is that same image from.
A quick question, because
Yes.
So that building would be behind those existing trees,
Correct.
and those wouldn't be removed?
Correct. Those are actually in the foreground. Those are actually on those single-family properties. Those are not part of this proposal. Those are those single-family homes off Edgerton.
So just trying to get perspective here. So when you're looking at the guy in the lower picture
Yeah.
that's there, there's a point kind of where he is, where it's almost sort of in the middle.
Yeah,
That is really the only portion of the building that you would see from Edgerton?
you would not see, in this specific image, where how the trees are, the building is still behind all those trees. The building is in the distance.
Is it
If-
behind the furthest trees?
Yes. So that white outline is where the physical, so if you would see anything, it'd be that top right corner, maybe in where you see the sky there. Otherwise, it's actually beyond those trees in the distance. It's set so far back that those trees are actually in the foreground. They're in front of the building.
And how about these other pictures? Is it
The same exact concept. So all of the trees you see, the building would not be in front of any of them. The building actually sits behind all of those. That's why there's a white outline and you don't actually see any of the building. We do have an image coming up where it actually shows the building, which you can see, which we did. It's a different exercise we went through, again, to be as thorough as we could on this. So bottom, top right corner, I talked about that. That's again that point where it goes into off Carpenter. And then further down in, as you can see, it gets pretty dense, bottom right corner image. That's only another 50 or 60 feet. So into that, essentially what is currently being used as a walkway. That's how densely vegetated it is once you get just that far in. The building is, again, 2 more times the distance further into the site from that. So further vegetated. This map is a little hard to see here, but you can kind of see the building in brown. You can see kind of the roof of the building. This is an image we did where we took actual data from Google Maps and did a real world study where we dropped the building in at the right coordinates, and Google essentially figures out where the foreground is of the building and sets it on. As you can see, quite a few of the trees are popping through the building. It's existing vegetation. Those trees would obviously be removed, but there's already trees in this area that are actually much taller than the building. You can see them poking through the building. We essentially overlay them on purpose so that we can demonstrate that there's actually already existing vegetation and trees much taller than the building, which is why they pop through. It was good to do this aerial so you can understand how densely that vegetation is around it. Now keep in mind that obviously for the building construction itself and the footprint of the building, those trees would be removed as part of the cooperation and consideration of the city forester. But it was an exercise we went through just to understand how tall those trees really are in some of those really dense areas where we can't go physically measure the height of them. And then lastly, there was a comment that Plan Commission as well, when we talked a lot about this specific topic back then, was about vegetation and about the tree cover and how you really can't see this building. And a lot of those, and we got a couple comments that mentioned, well, that's in the springtime, that's in the summer when the trees are actually in full bloom. This is now in the winter, trees are gone. You can see how densely still that wooded area is because of just the denseness of the vegetation. So even with all the trees, with all the leaves off, it's really hard to see past that first 40, 50, 60 feet of layer of that densely wooded area. And the building sits, again, almost a football field even further than where some of these pictures are taken from. So even in those conditions where the trees have lost their leaves, it's still very dense and very hard to see past and through them. So if we play an animation here, I'll talk a little bit about the design of the building and kind of how it works on the site. And then I can go through some of the materials and kind of the building design afterwards.
Are they fuzzy? I think I heard somebody say, can you show us pictures that aren't so fuzzy? Are they fuzzy? Would it help if we turn the light off to go through it again? I mean, quickly so you can see it, or is there a way to do that? I don't know which light is which, so.
Sure. Right. There'll be additional images after the animation to more clearly articulate the building.
I think you're getting closer. Does that help? Does that help? Can we get these? There.
That's it.
Is that better?
So in the animation here that's playing, we're going to start off on Edgerton, essentially fly through the site and drive up, essentially up against towards the experience you would have as a visitor or as a resident here of the community. So we're starting off here on Edgerton. You can see the building is situated pretty far back. The software program we use allows us to actually plant a lot of the same vegetation that's actually there, same type of tree species. We've done as much of that as we can with the landscape architect to properly represent what those trees around the site would actually look like, especially around the building itself. So this is that front porch experience as I talked about. There's a drop-off area for the residents, a lot of great social outdoor spaces for those residents to enjoy, gather, and you can see in kind of behind the glass there's some common areas, amenities for the residents as well. The material palette you're seeing here and some of the treatments we're doing in landscape around it is, again, this very natural vegetative type of environment. We wanted to have those natural materials. It's in a great wooded environment, and we wanted to kind of play that up with some of those natural materials. So we've got a lot of phenolic wood, which are some of the materials I have here in front of me. All the wood materials you see actually on the building are actually weather resistant and moisture resistant. If we could go back to the presentation, there's some images coming up here that I could kind of point out some of those materials in further detail. So on the building, what you see is a variety of the materials. We're using all high-quality materials we've used on past projects that have proven the test of time. The wood look materials that you see in front of you are actually a phenolic material. They're all raised up off the ground. None of them are touching the ground, but actually creates a very natural, warm color palette. It's also weatherproof and makes sure that it lasts a very long time. We've got masonry products, both large and small, across the building, as well as some metal accents, both in some of the window treatments and in some of the articulation of the canopy, for example, or some of the screening. This is a shot a little bit closer into that kind of front porch area of where the entry would be, the main entry and drop off to the building. It's a little bit closer to where that drop off, where essentially under the canopy, main entry would be to the right. As you can see, a lot of vegetation being added, a lot of trees being planted as part of the continued attempt to really screen this building, as well as even right up against the building, just 20 feet or so off, along with multiple layers of landscaping, both for the residents to enjoy and to kind of create that very natural wooded environment. This is kind of on the other side of where we were just looking back towards the entry. You can see we've got layered in front porch experiences. It's all about kind of creating these social environments for the residents. That was some of the goals and drivers of what we were trying to accomplish with the project. This is now on essentially the back side of the building. What you see in the distance to the right is essentially that area where there's there's a cafe. It's where the residents' main dining area would be. That spills out. We've got some operable partitions there that open up, really create kind of this great indoor-outdoor space for residents. Allows them on those warmer days to really kind of enjoy that weather, be outside, but still be within an environment where they feel they can still have some of those interactions and those amenities that they're looking for. There are some kind of natural landscape features, and again, you can see on the left-hand side, it's still a very heavily wooded and dense area.
Can I just ask one question? So you said there's like a beautician and some of these other service industries. They're not open to the public. At one of these meetings, somebody said it's a strip center. Anybody can go in there. It's going to be some kind of commercial corridor. This is kind of like at Layton Terrace or any of these other places where somebody comes in at a certain time and there's a room and they schedule an appointment, or
Correct.
they're open. I mean, this is for the residents, right?
Correct. This is for the residents. So this is a view kind of on the opposite of where we were just looking. To the left is that dining area that I mentioned. Again, those natural materials, we're using them throughout with some of those contemporary steel accents, but we still have a lot of natural wood tones everywhere. Again, that layering, that screening, that landscaping that we're doing to kind of promote kind of some of that buffer area that we had talked about previously. That's the end of my presentation. So there's a couple slides there that we included to address some of the concerns brought up at the last Plan Commission meeting. We've made a very strong effort and worked with the city and with some of the comments that we received to really kind of continue to explore how we can continue to make the project better. And we feel we've accomplished that with a lot of the research and data that we've been putting into this. And we're trying to create a very high quality product that the city and the residents can be very proud of, using very high quality materials that we use on a lot of other buildings throughout the city here in region. And we really feel like this is a great high quality product that we'd be very excited to move forward. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Were any of the other images fuzzy that you couldn't see that were before the presentation? Does anybody need to go back to those? Could you go back to the tree stuff, or?
Sure. So this is the layout of the site with the various heights. You can see to the south, which is the left side of the image, the tree canopy is about 30 feet in the distance, and you'll see some of those images in the next couple of slides. The building is set so far back, almost a football field in distance, off of Edgerton, that those tree canopy actually hides the building itself. You'll see that in the outline. All the way to the right-hand side of the image, which is essentially the north side of the site, the tree canopy there is actually it's actually taller than the main building itself. It's also situated at a higher elevation. The image you see at the very top, it's a cross-section, it's an architectural drawing that we use to essentially cut a line down the center of the property and start to understand where the heights of various things are in relation to the building. So the left-hand side of that top diagram is Edgerton, the right-hand side is the north. And just to point out a couple of things, there's some intentional screening being done. Those taller green trees you see are actually new trees that are being planted as part of the landscape plan. The building in the center is essentially that gray box. You can see it's sliced into various levels. The first two levels in the middle, those white boxes are essentially the amenity spaces for the building. To the right, you can see the grade starts to go up. So actually, there's actually single-family houses furthest to the north that are actually 42 feet in height, but because of where they are in the grade, they actually can sometimes be actually taller than the main building itself. One of the things we did as a reaction to some of the comments we had at Plan Commission was to take some more views down from Carpenter and from Edgerton to understand how the building would actually look from those view perspectives. So that top left image, the white outline represents the outline of the building. That is not the building in front of those trees, that's the building behind it. If there's any point where you can see the building, it would show up as it's been depicted in the other images where you'd see it have the materials, the coloring, you'd see the windows. This is set so far back that the white outline is actually obscured by all those trees in the foreground. The second image down is actually pulled back even further, and you can see the building is off to that right, that white outline. It's so far back, and actually at this perspective, this far back, it actually is shorter than some of the houses in the foreground. Again, that's a matter of perspective. Bottom left image is from Edgerton. As I mentioned before, the gentleman in the foreground, in the picture, about halfway back in the middle, it's about 6'9" tall guy who's actually here at the Plan Commission with us before. The building itself is so far back in the distance that that tree cover, which is about the 30-foot mark that I showed on the last diagram, is actually hiding the building because it's so far back. So the perspective from an eye level hides the building completely with those existing trees that you see there. Those are all in the foreground. Those are not part of the site that would be disturbed. Those are part of those single-family lots that are not part of this consideration. Top right corner is essentially the view from that dead-end street where we would talk about providing potential emergency service access. That would be gated. You wouldn't be able to drive. Actually, now you probably could drive through there because there's enough room between the signs. There'd be something there that gets put in front of it, and then we'd work with the fire department and the emergency service responders to essentially put up something that would discourage vehicles from going in. The image just below that is about another 30 to 40 feet into the site from where we're standing in the top picture. You can see how densely wooded it is just about halfway or a third of the way to the building or to the first edge of the building. You see how densely wooded that is. And then the final image, which probably reads the best now with the lights down low, I don't think my pointer here works. Let's see if it does. All right, so the outline, I'm going to trace the building in the left image. That brown there and that brown there is the roof of the building. You can see we put this into Google Earth with the data that goes into it that essentially creates the heights and the 3D nature of all that wooded area. You see there's parts of the building that are actually overtaken by the trees. That doesn't mean that those trees would stay there during the construction of the building, but some of those trees actually already are taller than the building, and there's quite a few of them actually within the building footprint. And the right-hand image is the same thing, it's just from a different vantage point. As you can see, the building is in kind of the most densely wooded area. That happened to work out as well with kind of the ideal site location that I went through in the diagrams earlier, where it's about getting that building the furthest away possible from all the neighboring structures. And then another comment that was made that we wanted to look into purposely was we went back and took photos once the leaves were off the trees, because one of the comments would be you could be able to see this a lot easier when the trees lose their leaves. As you can see in most of the images, it's still so densely wooded and the building is still set so far back that you actually can't see past the first 30, 40, 50 feet or so of wooded area, and it's mostly because of just the density of it. Top right corner image is essentially where those two red signs are in those previous images. You can see to the right-hand side of that, it's still pretty densely situated. So I'll just advance here to a couple of the images that I had described previously. At this point, I think it was a little bit better to see, but you can see we're trying to create this very high-quality building with high-quality materials that will last test time, that will really kind of create these great social spaces for these residents. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them of the council.
Does anybody have any questions, at least at this point? Okay, now you can't, not yet. You have a name, all right. So at this point of the public hearing, what I'm going to do, There are essentially four piles. There are folks that registered to speak for information only. There are folks that registered in favor but are not speaking. There are folks that registered against but speaking. And then there are folks that registered in favor but not speaking. Nobody registered in favor to speak. I think the applicant is, okay. So the very first person speaking for information only is Quinn Brunette of 1225 West Black Oak Lane. He represents the Whitnall School District. Did you want to speak? Yes. Okay. So again, the rules for this, just to kind of try to keep this orderly, folks can express their opinion. If there are questions or what are you doing about this, we can't engage in kind of like crossfire, right? There will be the appropriate point maybe after you're speaking and maybe after the next person speaks for the folks that did the presentation to answer those questions. Then we'll keep going like that. Okay? Is that fair? Okay.
My name is Quinn Brunette, Quinn Brunettete. My address is 12255 West Black Oak Drive. Mayor, Carl, fellow members. I'm here to speak on behalf of the Whitnall School District. We had sent the mayor a letter earlier on November 12th of this year. It says, and it reads, Dear Mayor Nitsky, we understand that the city of Greenfield is considering two development projects, both directly north of Edgerton Avenue and within the Whitnall School District. Both of these projects are near three of our four buildings. As you are aware, the close proximity of our school buildings, combined with other factors such as limited sidewalks, narrow roadways, and minimal traffic lights or signs, create safety concerns for pedestrian, bicycle, and vehicle traffic within our district. Any additional traffic to this area poses an increase to safety concerns. As development projects plans are being created and analyzed, we ask that you give thoughtful consideration to traffic flow and congestion, as well as any additional traffic these developments might bring to the area. The safety of our students, staff, and families is top priority, and we work hard to mitigate any circumstances which may increase safety concerns. Thank you for your partnership and shared commitment to our community. It's signed by all of the school board members and our superintendent. Thank
Okay.
you.
There's just a couple things that I want to interject. The school district did provide this to us, and I had an opportunity to talk to the superintendent, Lisa Olson, who's here this evening, about some of the concerns. Can we zoom out further? Is there a way to zoom out further in Google Maps? Is there a way to do that? Like,
That covers Edgerton.
yeah, so there's a couple things that we wanted to express. There are two communities here that are really in play. It's Hales Corners and Greenfield. So what the city of Greenfield does, if you notice Whitnall Middle School and Greenfield, geez, I've went to Greenfield High School, so I keep saying it, I don't mean to. And Whitnall High School, what the city of Greenfield has tried to do over the course of time, there's a program called Safe Routes to School. So if you notice, each and every Whitnall school that's in Greenfield has sidewalks associated with it, crosswalks associated with it. When we looked at 116th Street, even this year, we redid 116th Street, which contains sidewalks, so there's good access to the Whitnall schools that are within the city of Greenfield. Layton Avenue as well, okay? When we looked at this project, what we tried to do as well was we tried to, at their expense, incorporate additional pedestrian and access points from the Greenfield neighborhood, the Holmes Barnard neighborhood to the west, so that folks could actually cut through this property now, but to cut through this property to serve the Whitnall School District. The other thing that we tried to do, and we try to do as a city, is we try to cooperate with the district. The district recently preserved a piece of property that you can see the trail on this map, I think, right? See that white 8 that's on its side right there? What we wanted to do, and what one of the concerns that staff had, and I think we went through this at the Planning Commission at one point or another, is we wanted to enhance that experience for the Whitnall School District with their forest, okay? So we also have another community. That's to the south, and we are cognizant of that. The difficult thing that we have going for us right now is that even when Edgerton was reconstructed recently or resurfaced recently, sidewalks or pedestrian paths or something weren't placed within the right-of-way to serve the kids and the bikes. We don't have any control or authority over that, but we always encourage those things, especially on quarter section streets within our community. One of the things that we probably want to do is we want to encourage Hales Corners to do the same kinds of things that we're doing with Safe Routes to School. There are typically grant dollars available to provide pedestrian and bike paths to get kids safely to school, and there's all sorts of reasons for that, and I'm not going to get into all of it. The distance from the schools, and it saves the district money, it does all of those things. The same thing sort of happens with Edgerton Avenue. Edgerton is a quarter section street. And everybody knows what quarter section streets are. They're the busy streets. So what we've tried to do in our city is we've tried to expand quarter section streets, and some say that, well, they turn into race tracks, but even if they're narrow, they turn into race tracks. We don't have any authority or control over the Village of Hales Corners to fully improve or to significantly improve or to even moderately improve their quarter section streets. We would encourage that to happen, okay? As part of this, we've also talked to the architect and developer with regard to a traffic study. What is the impact of all of this, right? They're going to have to, it would be an abbreviated traffic study. It would basically be looking at traffic counts. And I think at one of the planning commission meetings that we were at, or one of these other meetings, I wanted to kind of analogize Layton Terrace, which is on Layton and 92nd Street, or Clement Manor on 92nd and Howard, or Lexington, that's on 894 and Highway 100, kind of on the hill there. Or some of the largest condo developments that are in the city, Tuckaway, that's on 35th and Edgerton, and essentially 35th and Grange. There's two entrances into there that you can't cut through on. Having been the alderperson of Tuckaway, the largest, I think it's one of the largest condo, there's like 15 or 20 condo different units, associations in there. If you were to sit outside there like I have for other issues, you would see almost no traffic because people are retired. They typically don't go to work at 7 in the morning at the same time school traffic does, right? And you can do that, but they are going to be required to do the traffic study. There's nothing that we can do to prevent the traffic of people driving their kids to school every morning. We have the same issues on 60th and Layton and near every elementary school and every middle school for roughly half an hour to 45 minutes. It was our thought internally that this is not going to have a significant impact on that. But they need to show that. Does that make sense?
They're raising their hand.
Did you?
If I may, the traffic study was completed, and it was, the results were negligible, on the lowest side, 3% increase, on the high side, a 4% increase. And this was not considering the amenities on site that would essentially reduce that. That was not part of the study that was done by TADDY, which is an agency that most government agencies use to do those traffic studies. At most, on an average, depending on the time of day, it's anywhere, I'd say the average of about 20 trips, which is basically 20 vehicles moving in and out in any large block of time. So think of an entire evening, for example. So it was actually a pretty low amount. It was actually a lot lower than we had expected.
Okay, so that's the traffic issue. So it's anecdotally, I kind of thought that was what it would be. But there isn't going to be this flood of cars associated with this development. The other thing that wasn't presented in the presentation but had been presented at the Planning Commission meetings and all the other meetings that we had. So when it comes to Carpenter and it comes to homes, historically there has always been this concern that whatever happened, because there were previous plans apparently, that folks on Edgerton to cut through because the traffic is so heavy on Edgerton in the morning and they wanted to get to 124th Street or something, that they would cut through the neighborhood. And this happens in a number of neighborhoods throughout the city. I won't go through every one of them right now. But part of this plan was to sort of isolate it so that there wasn't the kind of incursion into the neighborhood and the cut-throughs through the neighborhood, which would have been on Holmes, Carpenter, 122nd, 123rd, and on Barnard, at least west of 122nd Street. That was one of the considerations for this. One of the other considerations, which relates to, because there has been a big concern in the neighborhood about preserving trees and the water issues. And you're gonna probably get some questions about water, and so be prepared for that. We tried to figure out a way, is there a way to make it denser in the center, kind of like the pit in a peach, right? As opposed to having peach cobbler where it's covering the entire site. Going through the wetland issues and going through the extension of Carpenter and Holmes to Edgerton as a single family would have required regrading almost the entire site and wiping out almost the entire tree canopy because of the way the wetlands were laid out. So that was part of the reason when he went through his presentation, it looks like it looks. Getting back to your question about student safety, we care about that deeply in the city of Greenfield. We apply, I think, annually for Safe Route to School grants, and these folks sit on the Board of Public Works. So when you see the crosswalks on 116th Street, and you see and you see the sidewalks that we put in, we do that for safety for the kids, and we do that because it makes the Whitnall School District not have to spend so much in transportation. We'd encourage if there are folks from, and I don't know if there's anybody here from Hales Corners, I know one lady said she was, or that guy too. I would encourage your community to apply for these grants, and I would encourage your community to make it safer along Edgerton and along 124th Street. The other thing that I wanted to say too that's clear by this map, I'm gonna go through all of this stuff, and I'm sorry it's gonna take so long, but this proposal does not have anything to do, and I don't know if there's a way to show it on the screen, the development that was proposed by Mr. Heffernan to the west. Which, while this developer took into account a lot of things like traffic counts and isolation and density and what the trees are gonna look like when it's done, you saw it. I mean, they're probably one of the best architectural firms in Wisconsin, if not the best. The other plan we had, I think, some concerns with because that's not what was happening with that plan. Okay, just so if we get up and we're starting to discuss other plans, we're not talking about that. We expect folks to do kind of what they're doing and to get a fair shake among these folks. Is that a fair statement? Okay, I'm being told not to talk anymore. Just wanted to clear that up. Next person is Robert Lauer, 12370 West Edgerton. He's the adjoining landowner, and he's speaking for information only.
Yes, Robert Lauer, ROBERT LAUER 12470 West Edgerton. I've lived there for a long time, but I want to ask the architect, how deep do you anticipate your stormwater ponds what depth are they going to be maintained at, do you believe?
So what we're going to do is they're going to write this down because I'm sure there are other water issues in the neighborhood. I know, especially on Holmes and, well, pretty much the entire site. So let them write that down and they'll respond to you, okay? Is that fair? Is that fair?
That's fair. Good.
So we can keep moving along. Okay, I'm next moving to registering in favor but not speaking. Joe Kopinski, 12325 West Holmes. Michael L. Zach, 12030 West Edgerton in Hales Corners. And if I'm getting any of these wrong, just say something, okay? Jim Meineke, 12010 West Holmes. Is that you? Yep. Kathy Kilps, 12375 West Holmes. And Lisa Zach, 12030 West Edgerton. Those are the people that registered in favor but are not speaking. Is there anyone else that would like to register in favor but not speak at this time? You can fill a sheet, okay? Next, I'm moving along to the people registering against but not speaking. Steve Clark, 5237 South Meadowlark Lane in Hales Corners. Jennifer Pratt, 11410, West Godspell Avenue in Hales Corners. Godspell, sorry. Godspell, not Godspell?
Self, like an S-E-L.
Okay, Godsell. Okay, sorry. I'm supposed to get bifocals, but I refuse to do it, just so you know. Catherine Bear, 11891 Woodland Circle in Hales Corners. So where are these places? Can you show me where those?
Across the street, I think.
I mean, there's no way to pull it out further, is there, to? Sorry, is it even, while you're doing that, I just want to kind of get perspective, right?
They're across Edgerton, right?
Are they south of Edgerton? South of Edgerton? Okay. Thomas Bear, 11891 Woodland Drive, Hales Corners. Doreen Ubel, 12042 West Carpenter. Laurel Meineke, 1201 West Holmes. Chris Ament, 12008 West Carpenter. Barry McLaughlin, 1225 West Holmes. Delois Domjan, is that right? 12040 West Holmes. Okay. Michael J. Cokless, 12025 and 12035 West Holmes. Stephen Hill, 12101 West Holmes. And Michelle Hill, 12101 West Holmes. Is there anyone else that's registering to speak against but not speaking? I may have repeated you because if I did, I apologize. Okay. All right, we received the letter from the Whitnall School District that Mr. Burnett previously read. We also received a letter on Tuesday, December 17th from a Walt Morsey. Is here this evening. And he lives at 11500 West Edgerton, 115th and Edgerton. And I read it. My wife Pat and I have lived on 1150 West Edgerton for 40 years. Over the span of that time, there have been many changes in the area which turned Edgerton into a heavily used road. This is especially true during peak hours in the AM and PM because of the 3 schools in the area. The proposed development will add even more traffic to the area. I have safety concerns as a result. In addition to the residents there will be visitors, deliveries, and sorry to say ambulances responding to the elderly population. The speed limit is 25, but many often exceed that. I also have concerns that the need for senior apartments has been met with the many other developments that have been built in adjoining areas. If the developer fails to rent the units to seniors, is this going to become yet another apartment complex? Question. The development east of my residence and north of Edgerton was to be condos. The demand for condos was not fully realized, resulting in a highly congested area of apartments. The design of the first unit's construction were modified later to, I believe, higher density and 1-car garages instead of 2-car garages. Thank you for your consideration. This was provided to, I think, Alderperson Kastner. This is from Sherry Landowski Henning, 4985 South 103rd Street. I am contacting you in regard of possible development next to the middle school. Myself and many other citizens have concerns due to the high number of units, 212. This will greatly affect the aesthetics of the area, which will cause external obsolescence and lead to depreciation of value of surrounding dwellings. Therefore, can lead to tax impact to the city. City will also incur additional costs to redevelop the road to handle the increased traffic. That's another question. And emergency response to general population. I urge the city to allow only dwellings that blend with the surrounding area. For example, single family or side by side with a total number of dwelling units 20 to 30. No multi-unit development allowed. Development of that extent should only be on major roads like Highway 100 or Layton. Please do not disrupt our single family landscape and home values. Was there not? I don't know if there was another one. I think I got two from Walt. Okay. Moving along, the next folks, and I'll kind of went through this before the meeting, but it will save time now. This is where the people that are against can come up to speak, okay? This is not to engage, this is to express your point of view. If for some reason the first person goes through a whole bunch, right? And you have the same exact opinion, say you have the same exact opinion, and if something differs or something supplements it, we'd ask that you do that, otherwise we'll be here till midnight, okay? I'm not trying in any way to hamper any of the discussion, but it works kind of good that way. So the very first person is Bob Tukowski, 121 West Carpenter, speaking against. One final thing that I should mention, if you have questions because you learned something and you wanted to have it answered, the folks behind you will try to address that, whatever the concern is, okay?
Thank you, Mayor. Bob Tutkowski, 12105 West Carpenter Avenue. We purchased our home in 1987 with the understanding that this area was R1 residential. I took that into consideration when doing so and expected it to stay that way. I've been here before opposing other multifamily developments just to the north of our home on Carpenter, and that property is now R1 residential. It's continued to be, and it's looks like everything is going quite well there. So I'm obviously concerned what will happen to my property value, as has been stated by others. The other thing I'm concerned that's been stated by others is what certainty do we have that this will be a senior apartment complex? I grew up in a nice area in New Berlin, about 2 blocks away from a multifamily apartment complex, and I can tell you 99% of the police cars that traveled in our neighborhood went to those apartment complexes, not to any of the single-family residentials. So I worry about that. Other things that have been talked about is the traffic. I understand what people have said. I certainly am worried about the traffic on Edgerton Avenue. And I would say the other thing that I'm concerned with is what the developer has stated for tree cover. Please, everyone in this room, make sure you understand that they are going to have to cut trees down to build these buildings. So what you see in that Google Earth rendition, when you just see the roof, there's going to be a lot more open space and not green space. I've seen it before. These so-called tree protection zones, they don't mean much when the guys come out there with their chainsaws. So that's it, sir.
Okay, thank you. Next person is Jeffrey Ubel, 12042 West Carpenter Avenue.
Thank you, Mayor and council members, for the opportunity to speak. I'm Jeffrey Ubel at 12042 West Carpenter Avenue. And as was already stated, this isn't the first time that a request has been made to rezone property in that area. In 2005, a group came through that put the Winter Park development in. They originally wanted to put condos in, but that would have changed the complete complexion of the neighborhood. So the meetings at the time, the consensus of the neighborhood was to have single-family homes there, and that's what the developer did. And as the previous speaker mentioned, it appears to be working out very well. So would rather not see the total complexion of the neighborhood changed by a multi-unit building that actually would have more units in it than the whole rest of the neighborhood put together, plus 200 and some parking spots, meaning there's space for 200 and some cars. I would have to think that would have some effect on the traffic. I also share the concern about property value. being affected by not single-family units being placed in the area. Stormwater drainage is an issue that's been in that area for as long as my wife and I have lived there, for the last 15 years, and it's been kind of a nightmare neighborhood as far as water goes. So I would question how they're going to take care of the water to make sure that it doesn't impact any of the neighbors if the project would be proposed or approved. Traffic has been discussed as well. Definitely would be an increase in traffic with, I think what I've read, it was going to be marketed to empty nesters, but empty nesters implies children and potentially grandchildren, so there would be a lot of visitors. And the size of the building and the parking and the pathways around, that would cover a lot of what is currently open land that would absorb water. So I'm very concerned about the water runoff because that's been a big issue in that neighborhood for a long time. I also share the concern about emergency services being an aged population in that proposed development. There would be definitely an increase in sirens in the area. So in summary, I would say that I would prefer it to remain single family. That's the complexion of the neighborhood. That's what everybody that bought a house in that neighborhood bought it knowing that the area was zoned for single family units. And it almost feels like the rug would be pulled out from under us if multiple family units were put in there. So thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. The next person registered to speak is Jean Rao, 4525 South River Ridge Boulevard. And just to be clear, the people that are registering to speak and registering, I'm assuming that you're registering to speak for or against both the comprehensive land use plan and the zoning, because they're basically one and the same.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, Council, thank you for the opportunity to be able to be here tonight to speak. My land, my single-family home does not border this complex that is being considered. I actually live north of Layton in Foxwood Crossings, but I'm a wildlife wooded lover. I'm all for the critters and the trees. Call me a
Want to be a
dream.
member of the tree commission? You can see me. I'm just saying. We have an opening.
Not at the moment. This is my preference in this order. Call me a dreamer, and I probably am. Number one, I would like to see the land left just like it is. Number two, I'd like to see single-family lots, family homes, dwellings. Three, I would really not want to see multi-unit developments, even though I am a senior citizen, whatever age we are calling this, which hasn't been clarified to my knowledge. Can you help me on that, please? Is this people 55 and up, 65 and up, or what? Yes. The reason I bring up the age is because a lot of people, 55, 60, 65, my friends from my high school class are now 70, and they are still working. They are leaving at 7:30 in the morning, and they are coming home at 4:30. Not everybody retires at 55. Let's see, the age of the applicants for this complex. Another question for the architect from me is, will these units be rented? Will they be owned? How many tenants total for the unit number 192 are we planning on? How many people will be milling around, in other words? I guess that's pretty much sums up how I feel and my views on all of this. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much.
To talk.
Next person is Paul Stassi, 12120 West Holmes.
Thank you. Just to reiterate what the mayor said, I'm speaking for no one other than my wife and myself. So these are my opinions, and I know we can have differing opinions, so I hope you can hear me out and what's going on. I do have to comment on some of the things I've heard about retired people not being out and about at 7:30 in the morning, because every day at 7:30, my wife and I are driving on Edgerton and going by the traffic that we have to run by for the high school at that time of day. So we see the traffic in Edgerton at that time, despite that we are probably, target audience for this future development. But going on, my name is Paul Stassi, and my wife and Jeannie and I have resided at 12120 West Holmes Avenue since June of 1992, some 27 plus years. At the time we purchased it from the original owner, which gives you some sort of indication of the stability of that current neighborhood. My neighbors around me just don't move. We stay there. We have very little turnover in that neighborhood. Our home is on the 5th lot west of the proposed building. So we consider ourselves fairly clear. One of the things I also like to comment, because when we're talking about tree cover and how it looks from Holmes, and I think all those pictures were for Holmes and not Carpenter. Holmes has a drop in elevation, has a very high point at 122nd Street, has a fairly, I think the lowest spot in Holmes possible is where it meets up with the development. I'm curious at what the view would be from 122nd at Holmes as opposed to the bottom at the development for some of that viewing of it. So I am here tonight to advocate for the preservation of our single-family residential neighborhood of homeowners. The proposed changes to the zoning and land use map would lead to development of 212 units of high-density rental housing, including a 192-unit, 4-story main building. When this process started back in November of 2017, with what appeared to me a hastily called first of 2 neighborhood meetings we've had, the second one being last August, we were offered a choice: single-family development with all the potential traffic associated with extending Holmes and Carpenter, or the senior development, which would minimize the traffic issues. And I will give credit to the developer. His senior development has really minimized the traffic issues in our neighborhood. We should see very little of that, and I am appreciative of that work. At that time, I was enticed with what I now call the dark side, that senior development, and all of the, my traffic headaches go away. But after doing what my father always told me to do, is sleep on things and consider things, I came around very quickly that says, no, this is fundamentally going to change the nature and character of our neighborhood. And yes, I feel like I will take that additional traffic and that would be associated with single-family development in that area. To me, it's just our neighborhood growing, like it did when 119th and Barnard came up and came through development. Again, it's something that's added to as far as I'm concerned, has added to our neighborhood. It is part of our nightly walk. It is part of our neighborhood that we enjoy being in. I spent some time today on the Greenfield GIS site to look at housing density of the current neighborhood. That Holmes, Carpenter, Barnard, 124th, 122nd, 123rd, 122nd, and 119th Street. There are 104 single-family homes in that area on lots that total about 45 acres for a density of about 2.3 units per acre. The proposed development would have 212 units on approximately 14 acres, with more room up north that could even be developed, I imagine, in the future, although it's not part of the proposal, for a density of about 15 units per acre. Let me say that again. 2.3 units per acre for the current neighborhood, 15 units per acre for the senior development. That's 6.5 times the density of the existing neighborhood. Another way of saying it, in about 1/3 the area of the current neighborhood, you're putting more than double the current number of units. I'm just not really comfortable with that. The development would result in a 4-story building and that's what we've talked about. It's how the visibility of that four-story building is. The housing along Holmes there, which are the closest to that building, primarily single-family ranches, a smattering of tri-levels, okay? And now we've got this four-story, 48-foot building sitting there. Again, not comfortable with that. Again, I'm really concerned that it will be seen, especially in the fall to spring area when the deciduous trees aren't foiled out and we won't be able to see that. I'm also concerned with the fact that we are talking about renters, not owners. These are not going to be condos, is my understanding. There are no homeowners here, okay? My concern with that is I think we don't have people as invested in our neighborhood, not being part of our neighborhood, more likely to be transient than those of our current neighborhood. I've also heard talk that, you know, well, I think it was mentioned at an early meeting that these parcels aren't financially viable for anything else but multifamily. I don't know. I know we discussed it at the first neighborhood meeting as that possibility. Nobody mentioned that as an obstacle at that time. I also know that I believe that they were all zoned R1 residential when Mr. Petrowski bought them. And I don't think any of us get, you know, any guarantees of financial viability of our purchases. So in the end, I guess I just hope you will take this opportunity, and I'm speaking in favor of maintaining our single-family residential neighborhood of homeowners. And even if it has to grow up and expand a little bit, we all have to do that sometime. So please keep these families single-family residential. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next person is Patrick Lasusa, 11750 West Edgerton.
Patrick LaSouza, 11750 West Edgerton. I've got copies of what I'm going to be talking about here. Ms. Johnson, I even have one for you as well. There should be enough for everybody seated there. Well, greetings to the mayor and our common council members here. A couple of things I'd like to address right off the bat before I get to the presentation. The presentation will take less than 5 minutes, but first off, I'd like to address Ms. Johnson's comments here. The entire east portion of the proposed development here is not institutional. The entire thing is R1 residential. I know that because I own that property, approximately 1,000 feet of it. As far as the non-dedicated roadways that were laid out there, that was done as a result of a master plan that was put together by the city of Greenfield in 1991. I sat on that commission as a representative of the Whitnall School Board, as a member, as a director, and as a resident of the city of Greenfield. Those were merely proposals, but the idea, the theme behind that at the time was to maintain that particular area as residential. Those recommendations were carried unanimously by the 13 people who slaved through almost 6 months of slogging through zoning maps and everything else that the city of Greenfield had to offer at that time. All right, as far as an immediate concern that I have here, in looking at the renderings, from the architect here, the southwest, or the driveway serving the southwest portion of this complex, which runs east and west, is aimed directly at a residential household with little or no buffering. I've stood at that point on our driveway, and I can see clear across without any obstruction at all or any foliage. Mayor Knightsky, all of the ideas and thoughts that you had regarding the traffic and the concerns that have been raised here about traffic from the various individuals and from other residents in time and before here, is exactly why the Village of Hales Corners almost unanimously fought having the driveway exit as the primary point of ingress and egress for this project on Edgerton Avenue. This is why the developer ended up in court. The village, its officials, and its residents were fearful of the ramifications of what might happen if this project was allowed to go through. This property sat vacant for approximately 45 years. It was originally a mink farm, swampland. I remember seeing it when I was much younger. The developer bought this parcel and had an initial investment of less than $300,000 for this property. And that's about what it's worth. Given the layout, given the close proximity to the swamps, given that there is water present at various spots on the parcel most times of the year. Now, regarding the communication that I left with you here, look, during a review of text and email correspondence by and between and among the developer, Mayor Knightsky, Alderman Kastner, dating back to 2017 through May of 2018, a common theme stands out. The Greenfield residents of Holiday Heights, the subdivision bordering this project, would vehemently oppose any public or private roadway servicing the subject project as the primary source of ingress or egress through their subdivision. These are, after all, Greenfield residents, as am I. And a primary concern is vehicular traffic. Well, the solution seemed obvious to the developer here. Create a PUD, establish enough households with personal vehicles to populate 3 large subdivisions, and join them with the necessary daily support staff of up to 23 persons, food service deliveries, a daily barrage of UPS and FedEx delivery vehicles, and funnel it all down a 30-foot driveway into and out of Hales Corners. Given the makeup of the proposed population, 12 or more calls a month would be a conservative estimate as to how many calls for emergency services would be needed at this development. The developer states that the given age of the proposed population, 55 years to, I guess, infinity, traffic would not be a factor impacting West Edgerton Avenue. Yet there are 200 garage and parking spaces, over 200 garage and parking spaces to support staff, residents, and visitors. Rest assured, there will be visitors as well. It goes without saying that some of the larger units may accommodate grandchildren or college-age children on a temporary or permanent basis. The developer implies that a commissary, recreational area, fitness center, and other amenities will limit the residents' desire to drive, and the vehicular impact will be minimal. Please know that I'm 70 years old. I eat in, I use my own fitness equipment, I have grandchildren and friends and family stopping by, but it seems I'm driving now more than ever. I'm sure the residents of Holiday Heights would have welcomed this traffic had they been reassured thusly. I am also sure that our aldermen would be replaced forthwith if this ingress and egress were to go through on Holmes or Carpenter Avenue. Greenfield does not have to maintain a private driveway. Greenfield gets the entire tax benefit. Hales Corners enhances an already troubled traffic situation on West Edgerton Avenue. Edgerton handles a very heavy traffic burden from New Berlin to Highway 100. In addition to the school situation, I invite each member of this council to observe the Edgerton Elementary, Whitnall Middle School, and High School from teacher and early morning arrivals until the last extracurricular activity, with emphasis on the congestion that occurs during the opening and dismissal times and the subsequent ever-present impact on the intersection of 116th and Edgerton. There are no sidewalks, as previously mentioned, on Edgerton Avenue, and the potential for vehicular and pedestrian conflict is a constant possibility. There are now significant periods of time when emergency vehicles would not find unimpeded routes through the intersection and immediate area. The Hales Corners residents have been described as angry and threatening by the developer. These were repeated in written communications to Alderman Kastner and to Mayor Knightsky. The developer issued a written warning to our mayor here, Alderman Kastner, and the city planner, indicating that he had been threatened and verbally abused by Hales Corners residents. The developer also warned Mayor Knightsky, Alderman Kastner, and the city planner that the same Hales Corners residents planned to disrupt the Planning Commission meeting that was held earlier this year. Nothing could be further from the truth. Mr. Kastner, I have copies of all the emails and correspondence, and I can furnish those for you later here.
If I can be clear, I've never been threatened by anybody.
No, not you.
I have been threatened by people, but not
Yeah.
anybody from Hales Corners or Greenfield related to this project.
Tell you what, Mayor Knightsky, you asked for some empathy here, okay? I have plenty of empathy with that. I sat as president of our school board here,
Yeah,
and
just-
I know exactly what you're talking about here. I mean, moving the fifth graders
For other things.
to the middle school created a crowd size about 3 times this size.
Yeah, so usually the rules are like 3 to 6 minutes. So, I mean, I'm not trying to.
I'm going to
pressure
be
you.
done with this shortly, okay?
Okay, I just want
Okay. All right. Your opening statement at that meeting indicated that you took the developer at his word. Let's be fair. Our fellow neighbors in Greenfield, Holiday Heights, and Hales Corners do not want the driveway, roadway access from commercial development going through our residentially zoned neighborhood. We have exactly the same concerns and reactions. I'm going to skip the final note there, and this was regarding the description of events that led to the denial of an original project in Hales Corners, which you can read at your leisure. You may ask me questions about this later. All right, as far as the aesthetics go, I have distributed 2 photos of existing Greenfield apartment buildings.
I mean, this is a, and I'm not trying to be a jerk. So you're up there, you got a.
You've got the same photos, okay? And here's the situation, okay? They may be used as a reference point for the size and scope of the proposed project. Please note the relative height of parked vehicles at these projects for an approximation of the actual height for this project. Both buildings are 3 stories. The first is a senior community at Lexington Village. There are 120 units, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units, and it's got a gable roof. The Fort at 84 South Complex is a 3-story building with a flat roof. It is unlikely that the proposed 4-story buildings could be sufficiently screened on a year-round basis with existing tree lines to the east and west of the proposed development. A 4-story, 40-foot high building with a flat roof and rooftop mechanicals will clearly be seen during colder months as very little evergreen species exist to the east and west. Tree lines to the east and west are not maintained and represent a mix of saplings, mature trees, and dead trees. The number of healthy trees capable of screening by height and foliage, the product and the resultant traffic during the summer, and especially, the healthy trees capable of screening this aren't a very dependable situation. Even if the developer successfully utilizes the negative and irregular 9-foot grade the structures he is proposing, they will exceed 30 feet in height and have a height comparable to the Fort project that's being distributed and that you have on the back of yours. Please note for reference that the distance calculated for neighboring residences by the developer extend from the nearest corner of each residence to the project. Measurements such as these are generally taken from the center of neighboring structures. Provisions for screening headlights and vehicular traffic to the east adjoining R1 residential area does not to be adequately addressed. My question for the council is, if this is approved, will the city consider insisting on a permanently maintained buffer between R1 residential property to the east and this property? Now, we made earlier mention of a traffic study that was conducted by the developer.
I need you to pick it up, okay? I mean,
Yes,
just-
I'm going to pick it up very quickly here, okay? I know that this is controversial, and
It's not
I'm just
controversial,
trying
it's
to,
just
I'm
that
just,
I have two more people. and we
okay,
have-
I understand that. And Mr. Mayor, I ask for your patience, please. The sheriff's study, or I mean, the traffic study that was done independently by the developer here. While a member of the Whitnall School District, we employed the services of the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Department in the state of Wisconsin on a no-fee basis to conduct an independent, unbiased traffic study of Edgerton Avenue. As a result of that study, in the absence of sidewalks and the obvious hazards, we were compelled at that point in time to bus students that lived within 400 feet of the buildings if they had to walk down Edgerton Avenue. There is no safe zone for pedestrians there. Since that time, we've added the subdivision in New Berlin, which uses Edgerton Avenue to gain access to Highway 100 and the expressway. And traffic has increased on a commensurate basis. I would suggest, I would plead with the Common Council to demand a government agency or a referral by a government agency for a traffic study for that entire area before this is completed or before this is approved. And on that, I will end my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Could you turn that off, please?
That was the timer she had.
That was awesome. You got the timer. Okay. Next person is Kathleen Clark, 5237 West Meadowlark Lane. Did I already do that one? No, I didn't do that one. No. It's Meadowlark. It's in Hales Corners. Sales Corners. That's good.
My name is Kathleen Clark. I live at 5237 South Meadowlark Lane in Hales Corners in the neighborhood south of the proposed development. I'm here in the spirit of co-problem solving, improved decision-making, and a positive impact both currently and for the future. I would advocate for further analysis and exploration with regard to independent study of traffic. I'll just echo what the prior speaker said. There's a fair amount of science out there with regard to the services required by an aging population. And I would also echo the commentary that people from 55 to 70 years old in today's environment, they work. They own businesses, they go to work, and according to AARP, about 25% of the retired population now become parents again to take care of both teenagers and adult children who, because of changes in our economy, require coming back home. And so this could very well become a mixed-use apartment setting. I would also suggest that in addition to paramedic and ambulance, there are visiting nurses, physical therapy, occupational therapy, and we've heard that there'll be round-the-clock staff, which will change the complexion of the neighborhood in terms of round-the-clock traffic. I really appreciate, Mayor, that you've commented with regard to safety issues and the building of sidewalks. However, living in the area, even in the areas that have sidewalks, and thank you to Greenfield for that foresight to have those developed, children whose brains are underdeveloped in terms of their ability to assess risk and their interest in getting out of school spill out into 116th Street and Edgerton all the time. And in talking to one of our school board members, I'm aware that there has been one child who has been hit and a crossing guard who have been hit and not hurt, thankfully, in any, permanent way. But again, the mix of population of people with places to go and things to do is an issue. I've talked with the Metropolitan Sewage District. I know that you're aware that south of this neighborhood and on Grange, MMSD has, through the Green Seams project, created collector ponds, bought land for green space, because this neighborhood sits at the headwaters of the Whitnell Creek system and Feeds River system. And as previously mentioned, has been, a harbor for water. I would tell you that I would ask that you do some studies with respect to watershed, because the most recent watershed and floodplain studies of the KK River system, for example, in the area of the rehabilitated Pulaski Park area, have yielded that the prior flood studies said there would be 65 homes in the floodplain. But adding in the last 5 years of rainfall, that has now gone up by tenfold, and that's according to an MMSD official that I spoke with in this past week. So I would ask for updated flood and watershed studies so that we can understand the impact of paving and building in an area that right now is really a sponge-type soil that harbors water rather than shed it as quickly as you know that urban settings do. Finally, I would advocate that you not change the rules of the game for current residents who have a right to the value of their properties and for the development that they expected when they purchased in the area. I would advocate for a plan of keeping single-family lots and ask that you think about the merits of a project with larger family lot sizes of 3/4 to an acre, which could be very desirable in this part of the county. And even if, by very conservative estimates, you thought about 14 lots of an acre apiece in that area with a nature conservancy, 2 children per household is not going to overburden the Whitnell school system, which I've heard has been a concern. And that the upside of this project is really about raising, a good amount of taxes for the city of Greenfield with very little downside. And I think from the speakers who have come up here before this, there's ample opportunity to understand the costs involved with supporting an elderly population in the area, the costs and toll to the property values of those individuals who've purchased and are Greenfield city residents. And as a peace-loving citizen of the Whitnell School District, and to my mind, I don't know that me or any of my neighbors have been rampaging around trying to be threatening. I'm really here on the side of us working together for the quality of both the neighborhood and the quality of our decisions currently and for the future of the children in our area. Thank you for your time.
Okay, the last person I have registered to speak against is Nicole Tomczyk. Is there anybody else that would like to register to speak for or against it, would add something new? Otherwise, you can just register to speak or register to be against or for, okay?
So my name is Nicole Tomczyk. I live at 12100 West Edgerton Avenue. Mr. LaSuso lives on the east side of this project. I live on the west side of this project. On the very first planning application submitted by Mr. Petrowski in January of 2018, his initial unit count was 120 units. He had additional townhomes to be located within other portions of the development. Now the plan is 192, with a 4-story building. 4 side-by-side townhomes to be added later, and an additional 6 side-by-sides to be added on the additional land. I want to know why every time we have a plan commission meeting and the plan gets rejected, Mr. Petrowski adds a new plan with more units. So who is telling him, go ahead, add more units, let's see how many more we can get? I have a feeling most of us residents would have been fine with a smaller count. There's a lot less traffic, a lot less density that's gonna come into our neighborhood. I wanna know, have you not been paying attention to any of the people that have been coming to these meetings? You've heard us grumbling in the audience. You've heard us talking with Mr. Petrowski after meetings. You've stayed after yourself. We've had neighborhood meetings you've been at. We all are upset about this. This does not fit our neighborhood. At many of the meetings, we have been warned, we will not be able to speak, but yet you take questions. You then you kind of talk your way around answers, don't give us a straight answer, but then say, does anyone have any more questions? You even took a hand poll for another development at the last Plan Commission meeting on if any of the other residents were for that other project or against that other project. We've never been able to do that for Mr. Petrowski's project. Many of us have talked to Greg about his development, spoken with him about what would make it better, spoken about what would be easier for us. The feeling we get from Mr. Petrowski is that his plan's not gonna make it if he doesn't do what the board says. He has to go by what you say. So someone is telling him he needs to do more. We understand that it is his land to do with what he wants. He bought it, we understand it, it's his. Just like I can build a shed in my backyard, he can build on his land, I understand. We all have single family homes. We've got a few duplexes and the 3 schools in our neighborhood. Nowhere is there an apartment building, one big building. There are building homes with units, but nothing as one building. When you drive down Edgerton, when you drive down through our neighborhood, homes, Carpenter, it's houses, single family houses. With the parcels in front of the Petrowski project being sold and being labeled as single family developments, those single family houses are not going to block our view. The trees will not block our view. We will still see things through trees. We will see the lights in the parking lots. We will see the lights most likely up the private drive. We will see the lights from the signage on the roadway. We will see it. We will know that it's there. It's not going to be invisible. It didn't work in this spot years ago. It's not hopefully going to work in this spot now. I hope that the board will understand that the majority of us residents do not like this plan. We are upset that it's taken this long for us to be able to be heard at a public meeting. I hope that you all have listened to everyone and taken account what everyone has said. I hope that this plan can change at this point, that something else can be done and put here. I guarantee you that if it does not change, this will not be the last time you hear from the residents. We will continue to show up. We will continue to voice our concerns, and we will get as many people involved as we possibly can. If something is not changed with this plan, then I'm going to look into annexing my property out of Greenfield and into Hales Corners, because I just don't want to be involved in a city that doesn't listen to my voice and my opinion.
Okay,
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak for, against, or for informational purposes only? We're running really late. There have been a lot of good comments. Okay, there were some issues with regard, so we're going to go through these. You have been taking notes, and if we can go through them in a relative, sort of probably a shotgun approach. I mean, water was one, trees were one. those kinds of things, right?
Yeah, the questions that were asked about was the age, the traffic in regards to the study, units to be rented or owned, how many tenants total, about the various views along Holmes and Carpenter, about grandchildren or college kids, and then water concerns in general. So I can answer those quickly. The age cannot be restricted by law. It is implied as a senior living community, and the typical age, as was mentioned several times now, is 55 plus. On the traffic concerns, an independent study has been done. It's a company that's well respected. Municipalities use them. It's called TADDY. I would encourage anybody to visit their website, understand what they do. I mentioned those results, negligible from a 3 to 4% increase at max, with limited trip increase per that study that's done independently and is used by other municipalities. Units to be rented or owned, they are rented. How many tenants total? It is impossible to predict, because there could be essentially one person in a 2-bedroom that takes the 2nd bedroom, use it as an office, or 2 people in a 1-bedroom who share a bed. It is impossible to predict what that could be. We asked about showing a view from 122nd and Holmes. That is one of the views that was up there. We actually did a few different looks from that. We did as best we could from some of the concerns we had from the last Plan Commission, as unfortunately we cannot look at every single home along every single road leading to this area. It is just not feasible, even at that point, I don't know that it would satisfy the concerns. But we did do quite a few studies, including say 6 or 7 different studies across the 3 slides that were introduced in this presentation. Can the units accommodate grandchildren or college kids? I don't think you can limit anybody from visiting a grandparent, and I would hope that nobody would expect that. As far as I know, there are no rules on some of that, but I don't think you can actually legally do that. And then in terms of the water concerns, there is a full stormwater management plan as part of the application. We have to follow the code. We cannot do whatever we want from a stormwater perspective. The gentleman asked the question previously as to how much stormwater and the depths. It goes anywhere from 4.5 feet to 7 feet deep at a 1/4 acre total square footage of water retention on site. We are mandated by the state of Wisconsin to hold all stormwater that hits the surfaces on this site onto the property itself. It cannot leave the property. We are not allowed to build a building that way. That is, I believe, all the questions that were asked along the way. I'd be happy to ask.
Rent or own?
Rent.
2 more things were the property values and the trees blocking the lights from the facility.
Sure. Property values I can't speak to. That's not my area of expertise. In terms of the lights, we are required to make sure that all light spillage be limited to the site itself. We are controlled by various codes in terms of how tall they can be, how many lumens. We have a minimum light requirement to hit the surface for life safety concerns. All of these are mandated by Wisconsin code. We would hit all of those requirements at the minimal nature because we understand the sensitivity of light. There are no planned uplighting on the building. There is no planned supplemental lighting to essentially light features of the building. Everything is there from a life safety perspective for the safety of the residents and visitors.
Okay. Did you have stuff? Okay. Thank you.
It's impossible for me to predict that.
Address it, and we can engage in, just so we got to get moving along. We can engage in questions back and forth between people in the audience. So just.
You made a statement that you showed us 122nd and Holmes. Can you show me that picture? They actually did.
They did. We showed it.
Right, no, I don't think we're at 122nd. Okay, count the lots. There are 6 lots from the end of that street to 122nd Street. That is not 122nd Street.
Then I apologize for that. I'm not sure what street exactly that is at that number.
It says West Holmes
It says West
on
Holmes.
it if you look at it diagonally. It's home. It says right on it, Holmes, West Holmes.
Close to 120.
It is Holmes. It's
Correct. So if I can clarify, the previous comment was there was no studies done from Holmes. That it is done from Holmes. The comment was Carpenter only. So
we will not. I mean, I gotta really try to. You all live in the neighborhood. You all know where those houses are. You know where the picture is, right? Okay. You pointed out that it's an error. Okay, and I'm not trying to be a jerk, but we can't start arguing. Okay.
Okay.
Couple points of clarification. First, regarding the height. The current zoning is R1. The height limit in R1 is 35 feet. So we're talking about basically 2 of me higher. That's how much we're exceeding the current height limit under the R1 single-family zoning. 2, in Hales Corners, the lots that are along Edgerton Avenue, that was CSM'd now, and it has been recorded as 3 single-family lots and an outlet for access to the Greenfield parcel. As one of the other neighbors mentioned, the Village of Hales Corners decided to take away our access to Edgerton Avenue, claiming that our access driveway was an accessory use. And I, as the plaintiff, unfortunately had to pursue action against the village to get our access back, which we prevailed. Next, traffic. One other important thing, so Edgerton Avenue, those 3 single-family homes to the left of that driveway, there'll eventually be 3 single-family homes there. Under the current Hales Corners zoning, the height limit is 30 feet, not 35 feet. If you look at this wood back here, that's, think about 26 feet high. I'm 6 foot tall. If there's a 30-foot house and I'm standing next to the house, I'm not going to be able to see beyond that house. So unless you're in a helicopter or on a plane, you're not going to be able to see behind those houses along Edgerton Avenue. So you're not going to be able to see a thing. Secondly, traffic. I did, and we paid for a traffic study. We were told that this company is the premier traffic study company in the state. The traffic counts that they concluded on did not include our amenities. I argued with them, but they said they have no data to include our amenities. But it showed a 3 to 4% increase in the traffic on Edgerton. Now, I have kids, I get it. I've talked to Dr. Olson a number of times. I agree, there are times during the day when traffic at 116th and Edgerton are a problem, 100%. We're talking about 40 minutes in the morning, some would argue a little longer, and 40 minutes in the afternoon. What people seem to forget is there's 365 days in a year. There's 180 days of school. So we're talking about half of in a year's time, half of the days where there's school. And then we're talking about a matter of 45 minutes in the morning and 45 minutes in the afternoon. That's it. So there is going to be more traffic. There will be more traffic if these were developed into single-family homes than there is in our senior living development. Now, the traffic study people did not do that for us, but I was assured that there would be more traffic because what we don't account for in this traffic study is there is no through traffic going to Edgerton Avenue to go to the freeway, which there would be with through streets in a single-family development. One thing brought up about stormwater. Right now, the water just sheet drains right across the property. Jeff knows this. We're taking basically most of the stormwater from Hollywood Heights comes into our property. There's 2 18-inch storm sewers that drain into our property that were installed when the roads were redone in 2014 and 15. Clearly, water is an issue. My point is that by us doing stormwater management, doing something is better than doing nothing. Right now, nothing is being done, and the water just drains right across the property to the east and to the south. So at least we're going to do something to manage stormwater. Lastly, and very importantly, we're lucky that there are land available for senior living. I studied demographics and have been in the senior living business since 1993. We have a tsunami of baby boomers coming who haven't even entered senior living. Now, one point of clarification, 55 and older is the cutoff for independent living, but I don't know too many 55-year-olds, and I'm going to be one of them in a few months, that wants to move into independent senior living. The reality is that the minimum age of people moving into this community will be 75 or older, not 55. So just a point of clarification, The people that will be moving in this type of community are going to be 75 or older. The typical resident will actually be 80 years old and will be female. So when I looked at the demographics in the city of Greenfield, I'm sure you're aware of baby boomers that are going to be getting into this age group. Right now, I'm at the bottom end of the baby boomers. 55 to age 74 is the baby boomer trend. So we still have a few more years before the baby boomer and the crush of baby boomers is coming. Many of them don't want to live on the freeway. They don't want to live on Highway 100. They don't want to live on Layton Avenue. They don't want to live on Forest Home. They would like to live where it's quiet, where it's wooded, where it's peaceful. We want to be peaceful neighbors. Some people that I talked to who aren't here tonight, who live on homes in Carpenter, said, you know what? We like it because it's going to be quiet. We want it to be quiet. Seniors should have an option. All we're trying to do is provide them with an option to live somewhere other than being on the freeway. Every one of us is going to get old someday. Every one of us may have to face a choice where we might have to live somewhere else other than our home. Our first pick is our home, but if we do have to move, where else would you want to live? Would you want to live in a quiet wooded area near residential homes, or would you want to live on the freeway? So we're fortunate that we still have sites like this that can be developed. Unfortunately, when we did the master plan in 2008, nobody really underestimated how many seniors are coming, but they're coming and they need places to live. Not everybody can stay in their home due to stairs. There's many reasons why we can't stay home alone. All we're doing is giving them a choice and giving them an opportunity to live somewhere other than on the freeway or a busy road. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay. So at this point of the public hearing, I have to ask this twice. Does anybody want to speak for, against, or for informational purposes regarding this item? We can't, does anybody have any doubt where?
Can't ask questions. I'm sorry now.
So does anybody have any doubt where everybody stands with regard to the questions and the discussion that's been had?
I think you should let him ask his question.
Ask your so I mean, so this is going to happen. Go ahead, ask your question. Ask your question. Go ahead, Paul. I don't want to, Mr. Stassi, sorry. You need to go to the mic. You need to go to the mic, Mr. Stassi, and your address as previously indicated.
You were talking about the baby boomers, and we need this facility to support them.
Okay.
Do I need to identify myself again?
I did already. Go ahead.
Okay, good job.
You're welcome.
Okay.
You actually addressed the council.
So you're kind of addressing us, and then we're gonna. So this is how it works. Just talk to us. Just ask us. Ask them, and then he'll answer.
Here is my question. Okay, if this is truly to address the needs of the baby boomers that are coming, which I am probably plump in the middle of, okay, is there any transition to higher levels of care? Because that's what they really need. What drives us out of our homes is not to go to independent living, is to go to assisted living, skilled nursing, or God forbid, memory care. Okay? And if you're not going to, if you're going to aim it at really be taking care of that need, then take care of the whole darn need.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I mean, yeah, go ahead. You want to answer that? But it is what he said it was, and there's transitional care. Lexington Village, Clement Manor does it. I think this is the earliest stage of that transition, right? Without trying to be, you're independent in your house, you don't want to have your house, you go into this. And then when you can't be in this, then you go through assisted, and then the next step, and then the next step, and then the next step. I think that's what this is, right? Is that what it is? I think that's it, right? Okay, does anybody else, so the second time I'm asking, does anyone else want to speak for, against, or informational purposes concerning this? Okay. You have to come up to the mic, you have to identify yourself. We're going to limit it to 3 minutes. I apologize. Mr. LaSousa's wife, and your address is? Okay,
My
Mr.
name is
LaSousa is
Mary
your husband, and
Payne.
the address is the same as the point that I was trying to get at, Mary Payne of his address, right, okay,
Yes.
okay.
We have 400 or 500 people moving in here, according to the number of units there are. That'd be a low guess. We have a strip mall whose employees aren't being counted in our traffic count. We have people, many of them will still be going to work. And the traffic study says we're going to have 20 more cars a day. That's insane. There are going to be, at a minimum, 20 or 30 or 40 for the strip mall, plus everybody going in and out of the property. Yes, Mr. Kastner, it's a strip mall.
I'm confused on that, because.
So just let her speak, I mean, then we'll address
She
it.
addressed me, that's why.
No, we don't engage in that, and I'm not trying to, just please make your point, and then he'll address it.
My
and-
point is that nobody is talking about the real traffic count here. It's going to be insane, and you're going to run it right down next to my house, where my grandchildren play, and where the children go back and forth to the Whitnall schools through our yard. And they are going to be in great danger. You cannot possibly believe that this street is safe now. So you're suggesting that Hales Corners should take on all the costs connected with this by running all the traffic to Hales Corners, and that they ought to take our front yards to make it a wider street and apply for some federal money to put in sidewalks. I think that you are being immensely unfair to the neighbors,
Okay.
both the ones who
Thank you.
live there and the communities.
Thank you. Just from my perspective, I don't care what Hales Corners does with Edgerton. I mean, just because this is sort of directed at me, but the reality is it's a quarter section street, which has all this traffic on it, and it has kids walking on it. And if it was in Greenfield, I'm saying this, if it was in Greenfield, that we would try to probably widen, put a bike lane in, and probably put sidewalks in, or pass. That's what we would do. They don't have to. I don't care what they do. Okay. Okay, so you got to go really quick. I mean, you have 1 minute or less is what you have, especially since you're not within 400 feet of it, okay? You're like way far away, okay?
Yeah. Jeannie Rowe, 4525 South River Ridge Boulevard. Greenfield. I would like to hear a list of all the amenities that will be offered under the roof of this complex. I wasn't aware that in senior living, independent living, that you have occupational and physical therapy. Maybe it's just me, I don't know, but I just thought,
So I'm gonna
You're
cut
on
that
your own.
short. I'm gonna cut that short because they have described all of the things that will be in it, including beautician, physical therapy, all those kinds of things. It was pretty clear in the discussion that it's not going to be a strip mall that's open to the public, that it's there probably on a part-time basis for the people that live there. Is that a true statement? That's what I got out of it. I don't want to
for
put words in your mouth.
therapy. Therapy, OT, PT, physical, occupational, I didn't know
I'm
that.
just trying to cut to the chase. So when you go to places like Lexington Village and Clement Manor and all these other places, what they have is they have days of the week where somebody comes in, if somebody lives there and they have to have physical therapy needs, there's somebody there on staff, usually servicing a number of communities, that comes in and does that stuff for them so they don't have to leave. Generally speaking, I think that's how it works.
And this is
There
for-
isn't an Aurora clinic in his development that's open for physical
No,
therapy.
I wouldn't want it to be.
No, and I don't think people that, I think he knows that and he's not putting that in there like that. That's how they kind of do that.
I didn't think that came under the roof of senior independent. I thought that was assisted living features.
And I don't want to get into all that, but there are lines blurred between, it's not like one day you wake up and it's like, shit, I'm not independent anymore, and now I
Oh,
need some assistance. I
okay.
think it kind of just like,
So it's not
doggone it.
in-house. It's not in-house. It would come from the outside.
I would
temporarily.
think that they're not gonna have somebody living there or working there on a permanent 40-hour-a-week basis providing physical therapy. There's like traveling nurses, traveling PT people, traveling all sorts of people
Come to your home as well.
that go to people's homes as well before they get to the independent and then the other stuff down the line. Okay? All right. There's one more person in the back now. Okay. You have to come up to the mic, you have to tell me who you are, you have to spell your last name, and you have to give your address. And boy, you got 3 minutes, because,
It'll probably be under that.
okay.
Just really 3 questions, and most of them,
Name?
Chris Ament, 12008 West Carpenter.
Okay.
My questions pertain mostly to, for you guys, and I've not heard, and I don't know what the repercussions are of this particular development from a tax perspective. Can you speak to those for me at some point?
And you have 2 more questions after that one? Or
Yes,
is that
sir.
the one? Okay, can you give me those questions too?
Sure. In terms of a study, a lot of the residents, as myself, are going to be certainly curious about that. I don't know if it's been looked at elsewhere, what the implications are on property values, whether the developer or you guys have gone out and tried to understand that as well, based on a project like this or something similar.
Okay. Next question.
And lastly is, in terms of the project, I didn't know it was rentals, so now I do. Are they subsidized as well?
Okay. Do you want to ask, so the developer's here to answer those questions. We'll go pretend this was the information only part. Okay. Do you want to answer those?
Sure. Sure. Okay, with regard to taxes, with the current mill rate, we're anticipating the contribution to the city will be $216,000 plus. To the Whitnall School District, $230,000, for a total contribution of $648,000 a year. That's our tax contribution. The other question was with regard to rentals.
Impact on property values?
We have no expertise in analyzing how we would impact property values. Clearly, I'm not aware of any companies that actually analyze the impact of property values. This property, whether it's developed for senior living or single family, the question is, will we negatively impact the value of any single family properties? I have never seen a study showing that single family properties have gone down in value due to being next to or near senior living communities.
Okay, what was the third question? Was it traffic study? Subsidized? Is this subsidized?
No, this is strictly private pay.
Okay. All right, okay. Okay, so this is going to be the last person. Would you please go to the microphone, state your name and your address, please?
Jim Meinke, I live at 12010 West Holmes. I am due west on where this development is supposedly going to happen. I like his plan. I don't necessarily like the residential because the street is going to go through. The water issues are #1 issue. Why the city decided to just dump the sewer water or the storm water right next to our property from Holmes and Carpenter. We have standing water there all the time. Greg's gonna have to get rid of that. The retention pond that went in with the winter subdivision, when that drains, that comes down 118th Street where his proposed houses are gonna go. That should have gone into the woods and gone to a natural creek that runs there. I'd like to know why the city just dumped all that water on his property. Also, if it goes residential, everybody that said they like the woods there, some of them don't even live there, all those trees are gonna get cut down for the houses. And they're not gonna be acre lots. If you look at all the houses in the winter subdivision, those are 1/4 to 1/3 acre lots. So, I don't know which is choice of either this or residential. I'm kind of at a quandary with the traffic and everything else. It's a tough decision you guys are gonna make. And not everybody's gonna be happy, but like I'm gonna repeat myself, you like the trees, if it goes residential, that whole thing's gonna get cleared cut, just like they did in the nature pod. Thank you.
Okay, is that your wife? Is that your wife? I want to thank your wife for enforcing the 1 minute rule. So, I don't know how to answer the question with how the stormwater ended up coming off those 2 streets and going there. I think it always went there through the ditches, but I don't know. Our city engineer can answer that at some point in the future, not tonight, because I'm not sure that he's aware right now. The other thing I just want to point out was Simon's development of Winter Park. It went bankrupt. Everybody knows that, right? It's because it wasn't sustainable. Just so you know, it did. And then somebody came along and bought it after the crash, right? But that's what happened at the time. Does anybody else have anything to no,
add?
they don't. To close public hearing?
Second.
By Alderperson Caster, second by Alderperson Lobatsky. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. We are now out of the closed session. Now that, or not, out of the public hearing. Just to be clear, so they're going to talk and they're going to do stuff. This is not a time to answer questions and raise your hands, okay? Seriously, and I apologize to the lady who I once asked if everybody would raise their hands. I won't do that now, okay? All right, with that being said, does the council have any discussion on the issue? So there are some things that are going on here, right? So there's a site landscaping and architectural plan, which we don't need to get to yet, right? That would be item I-1B. There are 2 items of interest here. The first is, I think, before anything else happens, the first is regarding item I-1A, which is adopt a land use map amendment to the city. This would essentially change the comprehensive land use plan. The second would be item I-2A, which would change the zoning map. Depending on how you vote on that, you would get to item I-1B, which is the site building and architectural
I
plan.
have a question.
Mhm.
How many developments, apartments or whatever in our city do we have that are 4 stories?
None.
We have office buildings. What are the average of those in the city?
What is the average office height in the city? The tallest building, I think, in the city right now is the Aurora Building, which is 100 feet. Huh? It's 5 stories, but each floor is 15 to 17 feet, I think, and the top floor, I think, is 20 feet. So it's actually 100-something feet tall.
So that would be the highest building. Do we know approximately what our average office, is it like 2
Oh,
or
we only
3?
have like 2. So, I
Oh.
mean, it's the Associated Bank Building on 76th Street, which is an office that's, I think, 4 stories,
Okay.
right? But those are 11-foot floors.
Mhm.
And the Aurora Building has, I think, 15 and 20-foot, 15, 20, which, if that adds up to 100, that's about right.
So 4 stories
Doesn't
for
then, so it's
residential
more than
is
that.
out of our norm, especially this.
It is out of our norm at 84 South. When that was going in, originally was, the apartments were gonna be, remember, they were gonna be 4-story, and they were dropped to 3-story.
For financial reasons, not because of.
It was because the developer wanted more TIF assistance to build the 4th floor and the associated parking associated with it. At 84 South, it probably would have been appropriate to go to 4 stories, but the taxpayers weren't gonna pay for it through rebates and taxes.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
All right, so the first question I am going to ask is item I, and I'm doing this slowly and I'm reading it this way because we're instituting new software and she's typing it in and doing all this stuff so it immediately goes out, okay? The first one would be I-1A, adopt an ordinance to adopt a land use amendment to the 2008 City of Greenfield Comprehensive Plan for the properties located at 11940 West Edgerton Avenue and 120 unknown numbers, West Vogel, from single family to mixed residential, subject to planning and staff comments. Entertain a motion to approve or to deny that. Or to not take any action. You can.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by
Second?
Bailey to approve, seconded by Labatsky. Under discussion.
So this is just to rezone, right?
Well, just so all of these things are supposed to be sort of being done in concert, right? By changing the comprehensive land use plan and by changing the zoning to PUD, planned unit development means that it's planned unit development, and you're going to sort of be incorporating the site and landscaping plans that are before you. So the zoning change itself is for this project, as it's been presented.
Okay.
The comprehensive land use plan reflects that project. Right?
Okay.
Right? Is that right?
Are you doing a roll call?
Yes.
Alderperson Labatsky.
Aye.
Alderperson Bailey.
Aye.
Alderperson Akers.
No.
Alderperson Sarian.
No.
Alderperson Kastner.
No.
The motion carries or fails 3-2 to adopt the comprehensive land use plan. With that being said, the site, it doesn't even make sense to go to the zoning, right? It can go to, it's irrelevant.
You can't rezone without the comprehensive land use map passing.
Okay. So the item fails. Right? 3-2.
3 to 2.
Okay. Moving along. So I have to go through some items that are like committee items. If you could all just sit here, this is not going to take long. This has nothing to do with you, but if you all get up, it's going to take another 15, 20 minutes to get up, okay? Under item J, which, to be clear for your minutes, item
Sure.
1B, there's no action being taken because the comprehensive land use plan change didn't pass. Item I2A, with regard to the rezoning, a rezoning vote wasn't taken because the underlying comprehensive land use plan wasn't adopted, right? J, old business appointments to various committees and commissions. I don't have any this evening, so that takes care of J1, A, B, and C. If anybody does seriously want to sit on the Tree Commission, Zoning Board of Appeals, Board of Review, somebody from the 3rd District for the Park and Recreation Board, which is one of the...
We might have somebody for the Park and Recreation.
From,
that we-
it's Aldermanic District number 3, which is these folks, so if somebody wants to sit on it,
It'd be perfect.
talk to him. Mayor appointments, or Zoning Board of Appeals, which is always really fun. All right. Under K, new business, there is an item,
Can we take a break?
Can we take a 5-minute break to clear
I
out
think we
the
could be,
changes?
Let them go.
I think, so there are only 3 votes that we have to make, I think.
Mayor,
We have,
some of the people need to use the bathroom.
Well, then hold it. K, new business,
Early.
resolution appointing election officials, chief inspectors, alternate chief inspectors, election inspectors, and special voting deputies for 2020 through 2021. I'd entertain a motion to adopt the resolution as presented.
Adopt, or make the motion to
By
adopt.
Alderperson Akers, there a second? Second by Alderperson Sarian, would you please call?
Person Labatsky.
Aye.
Alderperson Bailey.
Aye.
Alderperson Akers.
Aye.
Alderperson Sarian.
Aye.
Alderperson Kastner.
aye.
Under item K2, applications for various operator licenses, there weren't any problems. Entertain a motion to approve those applications.
So moved.
By Alderperson Lebowski, second by Alderperson Akers, all in favor.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Items K3, 4, and 5 relate to the same business at 4171 South 76th Street. I'd entertain a motion to 1, approve the special use review and site plan review. 2, approve the application for 2019-20 Class B beer and liquor license. And 3, approve the application for the entertainment license at that location.
So moved.
Motion by Alderperson Akers. There's second?
Second.
Second by Alderperson Kastner. You need to call on that because it has a special use review.
Alderperson Labatsky.
Aye.
Alderperson Bailey.
Aye.
Alderperson Akers.
Aye.
Alderperson Sarian.
Aye.
Alderperson Kastner.
Aye.
Okay, items K6, 7, 8, and 9 are from the planning commission meeting that was held on
Motion to
December.
approve items
Make a motion to
6,
approve
7, 8,
those.
and 9.
Motion to approve those items as presented by Alderperson Kastner. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderperson Labatsky. You need to call that one.
Alderperson Labatsky.
Aye.
Alderperson Bailey.
Aye.
Alderperson Akers.
Aye.
Alderperson Sarian.
Aye.
Alderperson Kastner.
Aye.
Okay, items 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20 were from the Finance Committee meeting held December 11th, 2019. Alderperson Sarian is the chair.
I move
Entertain a
for
motion to
approval.
approve those items as presented.
I move for approval.
Motion by Alderperson Sarian. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderperson Kastner. Would you please call?
Alderperson Labatsky.
Aye.
Alderperson Bailey.
Aye.
Alderperson Akers.
Aye.
Alderperson Sarian.
Aye.
Alderperson Kastner.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Any items for future agenda at this point? Merry
Motion-
Merry Christmas.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Everybody, I don't know if you're, wherever, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year and all that stuff. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn at
So moved.
9:36, just like when Christie wanted me to.
So moved.
Moved by Akers.
Motion by
Akers.
Akers, second by
Me.
Bailey. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. So how do I turn this off?